Hi folks, I'm Alan Watt and this is Cutting Through the Matrix on May the 15th, 2016. You know, it's been snowing on and off all day up here in Ontario, and I know further south I've had even more snow. So it just shows you what global warming does, eh? You get snow in May, of course. And actually I'm thinking of getting a whole bunch of the local folk around here together on a petition. And then what I can do is do a joint lawsuit to demand that we get our share of global warming, since we're paying taxes for it and all that, all these penalties for living, you know, apparently living is a penalty. And so you're giving off different things which they don't like anymore. And so I demand my share of global warming. After all, they're taking money off you for it, right? So where is it? But that's a good place to start, really, isn't it? Because we're talking about sanity. Something that's in short supply today, because we have scientifically been driven into a form of insanity. And as long as everybody's insane along with the same things going on in their head, then at the same time, then that's the new normal. Anything can be made to be normal. I've said that so many times. And it's scientifically created now. You're nudged into new normals all the time, or coerced by threats and so on. That's what law is, isn't it? Through coercion. And you see you're nudged through peer pressure as well. Most folk will avoid conflict. That's what they showed you in that movie called Fight Club, I think it was, a comedy, where they tried to, he tried to show his followers, this guy's followers, he tried to show them how hard it would be to get people really ticked off, so ticked off in the street that they'd physically go after you. And so that guys in the street there, as people walk past, they'd soak them with a hose, things like that. Or they'll do all kinds of things and shake their fingers at you and try to discuss what you've done, but they won't do anything beyond that. That's what he was showing you, that people will do anything to avoid confrontation. Now, having said that, what I'm getting at here is that our scientific society today runs our heads completely. You are a product. We're all products. And they upgrade the products like anything on an assembly line at school all the time. So when they want to tweak something, they go into a previous, a new product, a new bunch, a new generation, and tweak them for the next part, to adjust them so they'll fit into the system that's being designed for them to grow up into, with the right opinions and so on. It's all done in advance. It doesn't happen by chance. It's something that the so-called departments of psychiatry, the early departments of psychiatry, talked about before and after World War II. They would run society. And a whole new scientific class added to what was called the government. And it's been done, folks. It's been done. You don't see them, but they're all employed, all right, the neuroscientists and behaviorists and think tanks and all the rest of them, and advisors, all these so-called advisors to government, guys you don't elect from the CFR and all the rest of their institutions, these think tanks and so on. Are the official advisors to government. And the governments know it, because governments don't run the country the way you think they run them. They're told what to do. Believe you me, they're told what to do. And the bureaucrats are far more important, since each department and bureaucracy has a specific area to run, and people live their whole lives in those departments. Then another bunch take over generation after generation. Politicians come and go, so they're not so important. They're just someone to throw the rotten tomatoes at. That's what a politician is. That's all they are. It's all planned before they come along. Whatever's going to happen, well, in that office time, is planned before they get the job. Any president or prime minister who forgot that would have an accident very quickly to remind them. And if they were too stubborn, they would have a permanent accident, basically. And that's the way of... Do you really believe that the power holders, the guys who set up world committees, United Nations, massive mega projects that have their fingers in every country's national, right down to local laws and so on, and what's happening. Do you really think they would just let someone get elected and throw all out the... Do you really believe that? Thousands of rich folk, thousands and thousands of all their or even their minions of worker bees, I'll just let it go and toss it out the window because someone... Do you really believe that? Do you really, really believe it? Do you really believe that governments work independently of the banking system? Do you really believe that a government can come in and spend billions to resettle refugees when you're already broke, supposedly? They can just borrow money from the great abyss out there, the big abyss, the borrowing abyss, and add it to them when you can't pay off the last lot. And your banks are ready to go into receivership, basically. Do you really think that governments can do what they want? Do you really believe it's them that's doing it? Do you? No, it's much bigger than that. It's the ones who decide which government is going to get in, who's going to be the figurehead for that term, and who's already planned the future. These are the guys who are responsible for all of this. And believe you me, the big international moneylenders are only too happy to have socialistic type systems put in because they're always borrowing. Every government's there, cap in hand. They can bring in billions or trillions off their taxpayers, but it's never enough. Strange that, isn't it? Strange. It's never enough. Never ever enough. But they get a war started when they say they're broke and they can't help you here and they can't help you there. They get a war started and suddenly they find billions that were just, slipped out folks' pockets or something. And then they're found in the back of seats in parliaments, things like that, for the war. Just astonishing, isn't it? Do you realise we're treated worse than babies are, folks? Do you realise that? This is worse than being humoured as some senile old fool or some totally ignorant little child that can't even put words together yet. This is ridiculous, the way we're treated. Isn't it, really? And you've got all these massive plays going on. I call them plays, like a stage play, going on all the time to reinforce the BS that this is all real. And on-the-spot reporting and all these investigative journalism rubbish. Huh? To me, you think this all real? It's astonishing, isn't it? Darn well astonishing. Incredible. And even those involved in the big creating of the big stage play long ago came out and told us that we're creating this system with scientific elites running the whole show, and neuroscientists and behaviorists and all the rest of the different ists and blah blah running our brains for us and training us in such a very clever way, along with the utter complicity and necessity for fiction to drive it home as well, because your guards are down when you're watching fiction, you're getting brainwashed, that yeah, you will be the final product they promised. Regardless of what you might think beforehand, oh, they could never change my mind on anything. Really? 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 Yeah, Aldous Huxley talked about it quite openly when he was pressed, quite openly, about the kind of world that was planned to come in. He talked about what they knew back then, back in the 50s and 60s, and the experimentation they've been doing quietly all along then too. He was in Tavistock. He was associated with Tavistock Institute on behaviour modification, where they used mental patients at the time in Britain. and other in universities too across the world that were into basically again behavior modification and ways which patients would even know they were getting modified. That's the best way, isn't it? The best way is to make them think that everything that they're deciding to do is their own choice. Really. I mean, didn't realize even through the ridiculous tests that they started giving, the new kinds of tests out in the 70s and maybe the 80s, it's all check things. Like, what would you do in this situation, this or that? Well, how many of you actually bothered putting neither? The choices they gave you weren't the choices you'd make, and they weren't on the paper for you to take any other choices. So don't make their choice. Because it's all that's available. Just use their choice. It's all they're giving us. Really? That means that you can go along with any choice government and its many, many myriad of agencies, most of which you've never heard of, by the way, and don't know exist. They're completely in charge all the time. These aren't the low-level bureaucrats you're maybe going to bump into once in a while. No way. No way at all. So you are the product. You are the final product. Most people are totally predictable. They'll go the way they heard. They'll buy the things they heard they're encouraged to buy. They'll give up all their privacy to be on all these things that they're encouraged to be on. And they look trendy when they're doing it. They'll even learn the new trendy words that they're supposed to pick up to show you that they've got the right lingo to go with the new. It used to be computer, then it became cell phone, and then this and that. Yeah, all the different terms that are put up for them to pick up on, and they do pick them up as though they'd invented them themselves. Astonishing, eh? It's astonishing. And they don't even know what's going on or what's been going on, even when they're arguing about things that are really irrelevant. See, most of the things you argue about today are gone. It's past tense. People in the US argue about America. What America? What America? It's like some strange fairy story where you're looking at all the things that could happen to destroy the beautiful magic land, but you're always looking outside of your beautiful land for it to happen by evildoers outside. It hasn't occurred to anybody in the US, for instance, that they are the New World Order. Huh? They are the ones in the US who took over the banners of revolution and never stopped. Till now, they're throwing normalities out the window all the time, right down to bathrooms, and who can use those bathrooms. And they do this with a fervour and an angst. You'd be scared to be in the same room as them as they battle this out. Madness. Utter madness. Now, madness is what you get when you've strained the limits of credulity and sanity. You see, and I've done talks about this before, years ago. A culture that was natural did not need a massive police force anywhere. Everybody inside that culture knew the basic rules. They learned very quickly. There weren't a lot to learn, including the children. Very quickly you learned those basic rules. So you didn't need cops and so on. Cops, police and all the rest of it tends to come in through something else which is incredibly major, which has disrupted society. Because a society where you know the basic rules, and nobody in society, when I was a child, for instance, nobody, I mean nobody, would have been screaming about not having a bathroom that could be gender fluid, as they call it now. We maybe want to be a woman today and a guy tomorrow, vice versa. You say gender fluid. We get all these rubbishy terms to learn as we go further and further into insanity. And people are fighting about as though it's the most important thing in the planet. As folk are dying off with diseases across the planet. As folk are being abused across the planet because they can't afford the meds to treat the diseases that are getting shoved out there. Never mind the poison foods you're all eating. It's more chemicals than actual protein. And all the things that really, really matter. No, they're telling you at the very top, in all your newscasts, this is the most, where you piddle, folks, is the most important thing going on in the whole planet right now. As they talk about the superpowers are regaining their atomic weapon. Oh my God. Oh, no, worry about where you piddle, where you want to pee. And you all think you're sane as you get caught up in it. Who put the trap out there? Who shoveled you into it? Yourself. You shoveled yourself into it. There's only one sanity. It's quite simple. Something that's pushing against it wants, listen to this, it's awfully important in mind control, they want a form of insanity. You understand? It's quite simple. Now, a few years ago I mentioned about the most important thing they were shoving out there from the US again, the country of revolution, of liberal, ultimate rights for everybody. This is where you end up with it. It was from the States that was dishing out the cash through the IMF to different countries for loans and so on across the world. At the top of the loan list, I mentioned, I read it before umpteen times. At that time, was that the countries that receive these loans now must start making it safe for homosexuals. Like that was the most important thing on the planet then. And now you're down to them fighting over bathrooms and such. All from the country of revolution. And because that is from themselves, they're terrified of things that might happen from countries outside of themselves. They don't have the ability to look at themselves and say, where's this all coming from? Who's forcing this on the world? No, it's not all the old jabber stuff, nonsense of the party of communism that you had during the Soviet era. It's a new type of thing, you see. It's a revamped space age communism, more advanced than the old kind, because this communism goes all the way to total mind control advocated by governments that are all signed on to it. Yeah. And the public, who are the objects of the brainwashing, are the last to even try and figure that out. Very few will. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? See, you're not allowed to have different opinions anymore. Sanity is the thing they're after. They want to exterminate sanity. So be very careful when you speak. They might realize you're sane. My God, the person's sane. Get them. Get them right away. Yeah. The person knows what's going on. Like one of these movies, And you can see the aliens. Most folk can't see them. But you get the special glasses, you can see the aliens running and everything. They live. You're there, folks. You've been monitored since you were born in ways you haven't even got a clue about. Not a clue. They've got the whole history, by the way. Right down to third world countries. They've all got the same histories of the genealogies of your family lineages. They know what you're liable to get genetically as a disease down the road. They know all this stuff. They can count on it, in fact, pretty well. And not only that, they can actually encourage a lot of it too by knowing what this particular disease needs to get kicked off. Quite simple, isn't it? You have no idea that even in third world countries, there are big specialists involved from United Nations departments and things like that, constantly studying. We're all studied. You see, for those who command a special position in the world, intergenerational, total power, total wealth, total power, and total privacy, because they get it at the very top. A life of Riley, basically. No, none of the worries that everyone else has been forced to accept as normal. They don't worry about, I left the house without my credit card or my this or my that. Oh, no. They have butlers and that come along with. Everything's taken care of for them from the minute they would open their eyes in the morning. They have no worries. Intergenerational. And they sit around as their twinner children with mummy and daddy, and they listen to the conversations of folk who are sane because they run the show. They hear the real ins and outs of society, how things really work, and how basically that their plans are going awfully. But be very careful. Don't let them hear you. That's what they'll say to each other, you see. Don't let them hear you, That's the real world, though. I mean, here's an article here from a free country, like Canada. Again, attached to this revolution, you see. Remember, the revolution really started, supposedly, in Britain. With the old institutions. Remember, Britain was the first country to have a revolution. Huh? And then Britain had the empire. And then it paid for a lot of it. All the taxpayers always paid for it. And then they changed it to the US because it bled Britain dry with utter wars and poverty, massive debts with world wars and so on. So the US took it over. And they're still, playing the games of borrowing to give away and borrowing to give away, so they haven't crashed totally yet. But the big boys who manage it all, believe you me, they could bring you through an utter crash into a new system, and you'd be the last to even know you'd been into a new system. Last ones to know. Look at many things you've accepted, from cell phones to all the instant automatic payments from your paychecks and that, straight from institutions and even governments into your bank account and away again, before you even see what's there. And you accept that all as quite normal. Quite something. That to me is quite something. Quite something indeed. Acceptance, see? How fast folk accept things as though it's quite normal. Again, great books out there from the 1800s and even before that on how inventions will change society. Because when something that didn't exist in an area of your life, where it's in the home or anywhere else, when it suddenly comes out into existence, an invention, you can alter your habits because of the invention. Just like we altered so many of the people for instance, who were really the pioneers of, say, the US and early America and things like that. They go right off into the boonies, off trails and all the rest, way gone, basically. And they survived, and they would take their chances and so on. As folk get fat and lazy, they want insurance, they want to be close to hospitals, yada yada yada. And along, of course, at one time came the train. And when the train came along, suddenly all those places way out in the boonies closed down, because if the trains wouldn't supply them, they could close those ones down, and they could make folk move to areas where the trains were opening up depots and so on, and towns would arise and so on. An invention, you see. The cowboy era in the States lasted 30 years, I think, before the train started to transport the cattle. An invention. look at the beginnings of its, really the chip for the public's side of view, that or point of view that is. And the first place that we saw anything like that was the simple battery-operated clock, or watch, I should say. That was a breakthrough in its time, and yet that little chip in there put a whole generation of watch repairers, clock repairers out of business overnight. Overnight, folks. And it also got everyone ready for all the little fancy things it could do, this little chip, all the things it could promise you. And folk had 20 different tunes on their watch and nonsense like that. Buy another one, etc. And now you have watches that match your cell phones and everything's been planned to work with each other a long, long time ago. And you've been trained all your whole life that this will come, not in a conscious way for you. They don't like you being conscious about it, like you to work in a subconscious manner. And then when it's eventually made or mandated as normal and you must have this, they've all got them anyway. And they think they planned it all themselves. So inventions change everything. The vehicle changed things too. Being able to travel for the first time changed so much. And governments did not like that, naturally. Since the history of governments was toll roads and so on, they could ban people from doing so easily. And now they're back to the same old thing, not just with being able to close down the major highways when they want to, but, oh my God, pollution by 2025 and so on. Some of them are saying this, some countries are saying this. The internal combustion engine will be off the road. Well, in the countries, folks, the little electronic awful cars will never manage with electrical demands and how much it uses so fast. So no folk in the country except a special elite. And I read the articles years ago again. The United Nations said that shortly there'll be a tiny minority on rural areas, and they'll all be very, very wealthy people. So everything's planned in advance. You're given lots of filler to fill your head as you live your entire life. They constantly make sure you get lots of rubbish to prattle on about, all irrelevant, or mainly irrelevant. Most of it's always irrelevant. But it fascinates you like a little passing happy thought, like a temporary happiness, like a piece of chocolate that's there for 10 seconds and gone. That's what they give you. They churn it out. Churn it out all the time. Better than having you thinking for yourself, isn't it? If you think for yourself, who knows where that will end up? Oh, good Lord, there could be anarchy. Huh? Well, the first thing you must do is take one generation, start with them, train them not to talk about certain things. That's how you start that, you see. These are bad things to talk about. They upset people. So don't talk about them. So eventually you don't talk about them because you don't want to. You've been told to upset people. Well, it'd be awful. Think what would have happened, all the terrible things that happened in history before, if you were allowed to talk about them. Huh? Think about it. Think about it. Today you're told not to think about things or not to talk about certain things because they don't want people thinking about them. So it's tough luck. Or offend somebody. Well, my God, if you're so easily offended, let's be honest here, you got a mental problem going on here. You got a mental problem. Yeah. I mean, surely you're going to have committees who get together for different heights of people, and there'll be a height. See, everybody's joining groups. You must belong to some today, special groups. You get the 5'6"ers, the 5'7"ers and 8'ers and so on, you see. This is where it's meant to go, into insanity. Insanity. Absolute insanity. Because when you're all technically insane together about the same things, someone has really been playing with your brain. And being awfully successful about it too. Awfully successful. Scientific dictatorship. And Aldous Huxley talked about that back in the 1930s. Because the elite that he belonged to have been discussing what they were bringing in, what kind of society they'd bring in, some of the trials and errors it would have along the way. Other ones they're absolutely certain they could make happen anyway. Now, to say the US is the appointed nation for revolution. And some other countries where they study the US, they have better descriptions of it all. And they go into a whole diatribe about liberty and liberalism. It's quite amazing. I mean, Khrushchev, when he visited the US, as head of the Soviet Union, he was asked about the communists within the US. He said, well, we don't call them communists in the United States. It's here we call them liberals. You know. Quite open, quite straightforward. And folks hear that and still don't catch on. Yet the so-called left in the US, not from the bottom level, but from the top, where they're given their orders, what it is to be a true left-winger, basically. He's what a true left-winger is into today. They tell you be worried about bathrooms and things like that, you see, and all this nonsense, this madness. And nothing but behavior modification for your target groups, which is generally the same target group has been for 50, 60 years. And that target group has become less and less vocal as they're not allowed to speak back about things. It's quite interesting to sit and watch it. Behavior modification. Behavior modification. Constant from where? From the US. And if you want a loan from the US, they'll tell you that. Hey, you better start pushing these things at the top of the tree here if you want this loan. And you wonder where it's supposed to end up. See, when I was small, we used to argue or talk and discuss deeply things that mattered to everybody. Essential things like, well, can we get enough food? Essential things. That's what it was about, essential. That's what was called sanity. When you're into the form of insanity, then the real mind benders, the ones at the very top who want to go all the way until you're 180 degrees from where you started, then they're really in control, you see. Truly in control. And everything around them, even what appears to be opposition at times, is all part of the big pantomime. That's what it is. I mean, I heard, one little bit from Hillary and who should give her allegiance to, and everybody in the States and everywhere else must give allegiance to this particular group. And they all give allegiance to. Donald Trump gave them allegiance. Which tells me it doesn't matter who gets in, it's already pre-planned. It's the same old stuff, and finishing off the rest of the Middle East and so on, and more wars and yada yada yada. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. The same agenda that was disclosed in the 90s is continuing until all those countries on that list get wiped out. That's a must be, obviously, for the big boys that really run the world. Obviously. And guess who pays for it all afterwards? Not the corporations end up with all the trophies, but you do, you see. That's what you're here for. Now, re-education, of course, was all part of the Soviet system too. If someone wasn't quite pro-Soviets, they'd bring you in and train you until you were. If you couldn't make it, you simply, had an accident, you just disappeared, whatever. Didn't matter. Nobody would ask because they were terrified to ask what happened to you. But one way or another, you were not going to go around with the same opinions as you had before. And here you have it in Canada. I mean, Ontario parents who refuse to vaccinate their children could be forced to take science class. No, science, don't call it a science class. This is propaganda, folks. If it comes, and I've done the talks too about vaccinations, trying to get the proof of how many flus they've avoided. You can't get anything because they don't keep any stats, they claim, to see if anything actually works. We know that better hygiene and better food to build up the immune system has had better effect, more effect than anything out there. Anything that's been given by science. Yep. But anyway, Ontario is cracking down on parents who choose not to vaccinate their children for non-medical reasons. The Health Ministry of Canada's most populous province has tabled a bill that would force those who reject the vaccination to take a science lesson called the education session. So you're in for a session. You'd be called in for a session by the reinforcers, the Ministry of Truth or the Ministry of Love, If the bill is passed, parents would have to attend a session before applying for a vaccine exemption. A consultation with public health units and other stakeholders is planned, which would determine the content of the science lesson. This is total mind, what. Ontario was the first province in Canada to introduce immunization laws. In 1982, it required that children attending school be vaccinated against certain diseases, including diphtheria, tetanus, polio, and measles, unless they have a signed exemption. And that's how they start everything. We'll give you a way out. After so many years, they take away that way out, you see, and call you mad if you don't go along with it. After routine immunization was introduced, cases of those diseases dramatically reduced. Is that better hygiene? Parents who apply for an exemption for non-medical reasons risk having their child pulled from school if there's an outbreak, or the immediate risk of an outbreak of a designated disease. Now, it goes against all reasoning, because if you are in university and you haven't had an inoculation for something, and everybody else has, then supposedly the ones who've had it are perfectly safe if it's a real outbreak. So why are they targeting the person who hasn't had the inoculation? As though they're the ultimate risk, the evil here. When you can't get logic, there's some con game going on, folks. That's always been the test bed. You must get logic, rationality, and logic, and the proof of things, the data. A proposed bill follows the suspension of nearly 600 high school students who failed to provide their immunization record as part of Health Minister Eric Hoskins' proposed new 5-year strategy. We're getting 5-year strategies and 10-year, 50-year plans like the communist system. Anyway, it's called Immunization 2020, which will also launch an online tool. So once again, that great internet that's meant to keep track, trace, and the whole bit is going to help parents keep track of their vaccination schedule. And it will prompt you when you start forgetting. Don't forget, you have to get these needles stuck in you next month. Okay? So this is your part of your propaganda tool here. But it's just not, I've read the articles before. There were top ones written by scientists saying, where's the proof that this particular flu shot worked? Etc., etc., etc. From the authorities themselves. So there you go. There's your free society, So you're forced to a science class. I guess if you keep using the same old bathroom and you don't listen to all this nonsense of, they'll force you to take a science class as well. Think it'll stop this there? Of course it won't. Whenever authority butts in and starts telling you by force of law something, it never stops at the one thing they started with. Believe you me. And what I'm showing you here is that do you have any control at all over anything in what you think is your society? You'll find you don't. I mean, just take a few of the rotten topics that I can't even bother reading anymore. Here's one. This is Canada again. The marquee liberal commitment to Syrian refugees resettlement could end up costing the taxpayers here in Canada close to $1 billion. Right? You're broke. Your banks have already stated they've got bail-ins now scheduled. It's all been signed into law. Haircuts, as they say, and it's not going to stop. Basically, the promised insured amount in the banks. Because I've read a lot of the stuff that they put out on. Literally, you need about 25,000 lawyers, I think, to make sense of it. But it's going to give them the right to dip in deeper and deeper and deeper, regardless of how much you got in the bank. But no, let's just bring all this. Let's just borrow more money to bring more folk into the country. So you get that story. Then you get this one. It's amazing too. You get the same stories from every country at the same time, isn't it? Germany's federal government expects to spend 93.6 billion euros. That's $106.2 billion to support refugees over the next 5 years. Right? And then you get the Bank of Canada to beef up market intelligence to better gauge new risks, it says. Yeah, market intelligence team. So we've got a market intelligence team. This is from the same banks that keep overspending and but to bail them out every time, intelligence team? Well, maybe intelligent. Doesn't mean they're stupid. They got intelligence all right, but who are they looking out for? Huh? Yes, intelligent, looking out for themselves. Anyway, responsible for keeping in touch with traders, asset managers, and other industry players. So there you go again, you see. These are the kind of stories that they churn out in every country at the same time. To me, you think it's just you see. And then I get another ridiculous thing. You're just out of hospital. There's a demand there from the reassessing your property. And what they always do is they tack another 50 grand onto something. Well, we estimate your property's going up 50 for what? I'm still in the same swamp. Still the same old swamp. The house is falling apart. And they try to tell you that your property went up according to other people's market values, not my own, but other people. What rubbish is this? What rubbish is this? Huh? That's absolute rubbish, as you well know. Because everything's fallen apart. I said nothing new is in here at all. It's still the same little place, it's nothing new has been built in the area. There's no great giant Walmarts and big, nothing like that, no. No, nothing they could justify what they're prattling on about. But then you have this, you see. China is buying Canada inside the new real estate frenzy. Well, they've been buying Canada since the 80s. I remember in Toronto, they used to come around, I'd heard about it before I saw it, but they literally did come round the doors and streets asking to buy your house. And they'd have briefcases full of cash. Yeah. And it says how China's affection for Canada's real estate is reshaping the nation's housing market well beyond Vancouver. So in other words, if they're buying property up, then all the con artists that belong to government who want more taxes off you is going to use it as an excuse to pretend that your value of your home's gone up, even if there's no Chinese living anywhere near you. It's the same stories that I've read in Australia over the years too, that's one reason their market's out of sight for ordinary folk living in Australia. They can't afford the houses anymore. Well, it's the same thing in Vancouver in Canada and things like that, you know. Same stories all over the world. You'd swear it's all coming from the same computer program that makes up all these stories, because it's all little factoids of truth, little bits of truth, and amongst all the confusion that they put out there to get you prattling on about, you know. Yeah. Vancouver's housing crisis caused by foreign money and government, report says. It's just disgusting. Until the average house in Vancouver is over $1 million for some little stick house somewhere. You know, rubbish. But that's what you live in. You live in this madness, which is very, very well controlled madness by those who run your minds, you see. And most folk, because I've studied us so well, are egocentric and egocentric, will do the things we like to do, but we'll shy away from the things which we don't like to do. And that's the same for news. Oh, don't tell me that. I don't want to hear that. That makes me feel unpleasant. Tell me about some new fictional program that's coming on, some comedy, and let me laugh about it. That's the choices that people have today. The people today, if you put them into a pre-World War II environment, couldn't survive at all. They would be suicidal, completely suicidal. Because back in the pre-World War II society, you didn't have so many government agencies. They needed World War II to take over the agriculture, the housing markets, the food industry through the Department of Food. Yes, every country had a Department of Food, by the way. And they put you on these massive rationing things and had starvation all over the place until they have never released officially the starvation figures that killed how many in places like Britain during World War II. You can get lots of the propaganda stuff saying, here's where you're allowed a quarter of an ounce of butter a week and stuff like that. Yada, yada, yada. But they don't show you how many folk died of starvation, because they didn't just die of starvation. Right through the 50s and the 60s, the effects of this rationing during World War II had the effects on the generations that were growing up then and stunted their growth and stunted other things that happened with them. It wasn't until the 1980s, you started getting taller children again. That's how long it takes to catch up through the different genes. You've no idea what the big boys know at the top, because they've always been studying you. Always. And still are. Now it's easier because you do it all for them. Yeah, I know there's no privacy on my cell phone, but well, you know, I've got some, it's a trade-off, you know. Yeah. That's people, yeah. That's people for you. It reminds me of that. You understand too, there's a lot of people at the top laugh. They laugh as when they compare what happens today with religion. Because religion has a lot of things you think are crazy in it. But they're not. It's also part of the studying of humanity thousands of years ago and today. So one guy gives away his birthright, his right to rule and all the rest of it, because he's hungry. He wants a plate of pottage, to say. The convenience of having something nice and warm right now, this instant, and you give it all up. Is that so far-fetched as what you've been doing yourself? Until, literally, you think it's a quaint but silly idea to talk about privacy. Folk fought for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years throughout Europe for privacy, because they had none. The king's men would bust into your house at any time with their bayonets on, the whole thing, and stab you to death if you gave them any lip back. That was the normal. You had no rights as a tenant. Zilch. And one generation gives it all away because, well, yeah, if I give that away, I'll have a trade-off. I can get this and do this, you know, on this piece of plastic, cheap rubbish they got in their hand. And the government agencies have never had it so good because they're getting everyone's real data and real-time content. What you're thinking, they know immediately. Where that thought might end up taking you, they know immediately. See, in a complete totalitarian system, everyone must be completely predictable. And you all are now. Now, I didn't mean to go off on this little rant tonight. In fact, I was on the phone earlier. Now, I can't talk long because my voice goes after that awful thing that happened not long ago there, and it's still healing, so I've got to be careful how long I talk, things like that, because my voice starts to go. But I'll battle on for as long as I can, and I'm still looking into things I need to get treatment for myself because I won't get inside Canada. Yeah. And that's what you have to do today. You have to be hopefully wise enough to check everything out for yourself and take matters in your own hand for your own life, because the time will come for a lot of you that you're going to have to. That's how things are. As I said already, there was snow earlier this morning, and it's been flurrying on and off all day. And we're well into May now. And Hamish, the dog, as I say, for all his cancer problems, is still able to wag his tail. He's got 3 tumours in the tail alone. But he'll wag that tail as well, and still eating, thank goodness. I managed to get him eating when I got back from the hospital. It could do a couple of days to get him to be able to eat and hold anything down, but I did it, and it's like night and day. But his life is shortened as well, obviously. And you've got to take each day as it is, because it's a little miracle that's with you every day, isn't it? That's what we are. We're all little miracles. If you toss out all the little petty nonsenses that you've swallowed and been indoctrinated with, everybody's a little miracle. And that's all you have eventually is life and each other, isn't it? That's what you have. Well, anyway, hope I haven't bored you. And as I say, I have to thank a lot of folk who are still emailing me. And the folk who can't afford to send me anything, don't worry about it, because there's lots of you out there. And I know how tough times are now, and people are broke. People are broke, they're losing jobs and losing their places where they're living and all the rest of it. Not just in one country, it's across the world now. Selectively, and some more than others, certainly. But what it teaches you is that life isn't for you. Life isn't all that predictable. Accidents do happen. Things do happen. And when they do, they throw you off kilter a little bit sometimes. Sometimes you need to get thrown off kilter to make you think. But yeah, as I say, you're all little miracles. You're given a whole lifetime to do something with your life, even for yourself, to learn things, to perhaps change something for the rational better, not the insane nonsense, the rational better. And you don't. You're being entertained to death your whole life long. So think of your opponent that creates all the things for all the little miracles to stop them getting together and doing things which are good and creating a better place for themselves under rationality, not insanity. That's a lot of work for them to make sure that everyone's kept apart with pettiness and little things which are disagreeable to each other. Understand, there's an insane system which is insane but clever like a fox with its insanity. And it's at work right now to destroy anything which is good. And anything which has been good, for that matter. Think about it. See, only you can do things like think about things, maybe say things too. If you draw attention to yourself, well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? At least your name will be standing out in somebody's record, whether they like you or not. As opposed to in what they call the dross of history. These are all the clones of each other. They're called the dross. Doesn't matter if they're alive or not, really. That's how they talk about them at the top. So your conditioning and how you allow conditioning to rule you classifies you and has you in the category that the elite want you to be in. Think. The time might come when you will not have the time to think anymore. You won't have a lifetime to sit and think about things. Never mind do anything about it. I used to watch my parents, as I've said it before, when the TV came in Britain. I'd watch them smile at the same time or almost cry at the same time, or all the expressions as they were being sucked into this Medusa system every darn night. And I thought about all the hours, countless hours of life wasted, where they could think for themselves and plan and work things out for themselves and decide things for themselves. But nope. Instead of that, they were being programmed through fiction and emotion, which is far more intense today than it was even then. And you only get this one shot at things. You only get one shot here. That's what living is. Well, anyway, rather than preach, I'm going to preach anyway, so I'll leave that to the fake guys out there to do the preaching to you. So from Hamish, myself, from Ontario, Canada, where another week has gone in, then it's good night to me. Your God or your gods go with you.